Nice. All right, hi everybody. So I'm going to share with you a role that I found to be very powerful with making sure we can make reliability as effective as possible. And I call this role the Reliability Czar. And it came about because, as many of you have experienced being in reliability organizations, that the information that comes out that we work so hard to create in test and analysis and other methods or field data doesn't get to where it needs to be. And I kept seeing over and over again how a little bit of it was the natural filtration system of the way information moves within an organization. And so this role is an individual who, it's not a role like in their org chart or human resources would reference them as. They have another role in the organization. Maybe they're even a test technician. Maybe they're an engineer, design engineer, reliability engineer. They could be a project manager. But this is a role they take on for a temporary period of time, and I'll describe how the role will help. So if we start off with our base mission, which is designed for reliability, and how to have it be as effective as possible, we have to consider a few things. What are some of the common challenges? Well, we tend to, with our product development programs, have a couple of factors that direct what we do throughout the program. I mean, there's times of conflict and we have to resolve them, and we look back to this original balance we created to get maximum market share. And four typical ones are time to market. Everybody knows the three most important things to a project manager: time to market, time to market, time to market, right? They drive very hard. Product cost point is obviously can be a very big deal. Product features, I mean, this is where R&D is driving new technology, which can be a very competitive factor. And then, of course, reliability is a goal. Now, in different products, even within the same company, you can have very different balances of this. If you're making a toy and it's not on the shelf by Thanksgiving, forget it. If it's after the holiday season, time to market is a very dominant factor there. And also with a toy, reliability might be pretty low, because typically kids get a toy, they're excited about it, a few months later they forget about it, doesn't matter. If you're making the Mars rover, the balance between reliability and time to market's a little bit different. If they find an issue with the rover and say, hey, we need a few more months to figure it out, is it okay if we did that? They're like, yeah, that's fine. Just don't let this thing fail, because we have a really bad field service plan for this. Nobody's going to Mars to fix it. It's not happening. This thing cannot fail. So the balance can be very, very different, and we have to be aware of that. And so reliability, just because I'm a reliability person and you guys are, I think anybody can argue that reliability really has a very weak seat at the negotiation table mid-program. And there's one reason. The reason is the return on investment in reliability is the farthest out of any of those four items, right? If you look at time to market, and you invest in getting to market at a certain point in time, when do you find out if you did it? When you release the product. It's right there. Cost point. You figured out cost point within the program, right? You have a bill of materials cost. Long before you release, you know your cost point. So anything you invest in a cost reduction initiative, you're going to see results very soon. Product features, R&D is going to be showing that there is a prototype that works. This feature is possible early in the program. Reliability, you invest in reliability, you're at the negotiation table, there's a lot of passion and pressure, and people have goals that are very personal because maybe their job is tied to it. You start negotiating, well, look, let's do this reliability test. Let's demonstrate this confidence so that in 2 years, everything will be okay. And that doesn't hold the same kind of weight as the others do, because 6 months after release, a year after release, these are the time periods where you get the returns on the investment in reliability. So it can be really difficult for companies to play the long game really well, and they end up making short-sighted decisions, especially in our modern day world, where you have this insane pressure cycle, which strangely enough starts with you guys all in this room. The pressure cycle is the whole world measures everything quarterly now, right? Wall Street measures you quarterly for so many businesses. Well, why do they measure things quarterly and pressure the board of directors, who pressure the CEO, who pressure the project managers? Because your 401ks are going to buy and sell those companies based on how well they do in quarters. So it's funny enough, we end up starting where we start that pressure cycle, because we have fund managers who manage our retirements, who want to see good performance each quarter, who pressure the board of directors, So we need to have a counterforce to help with that. And there's a lot of things we can do, but this role is a big part of it. One of the key functions here for the Czar is that they have the ability to float within the organization with regard to how they communicate. Everything is an open door to them. They can communicate with anybody. I mean, traditionally, information is going to flow from, let's say, the design team. I'm including everything associated with product development there. That would have to go up through project managers, VPs, and directors. If there's issues, it would get filtered through them and ultimately get to leadership. And they have a lot of different information coming in different directions. So it's going to be competing for attention and time. And you also can't eliminate the human element of it, right? People will filter information based on their bias or what's of interest to them. I've had very well-intentioned VPs that I've worked with say, you know what, I definitely think that is going to be a problem, what the team's pointing out. But let's just put that on the list to fix in 2.0. Right? Like really openly saying, let's just let this failure happen in the field and do the best we can to respond quickly, because we have time to market's everything. And really, without them saying, I know it's because a lot of how they're going to be measured. And I would do the same thing in their position. So the information's going to get lost. The Czar has the ability to very casually float information from maybe the front line, from technicians and engineers, or just a coffee pot conversation, and things that they feel are important, and you'll see why they're qualified to do this, to share it casually with leaders. And there's going to be a very strong, trusted relationship here, both at the front line. When I say front line, I mean right down to the technician's bench, test lab, design engineer's desk, and with leadership. So what's important here is you can see a cornerstone of this is good communication. So I've implemented and helped a lot of organizations change how reliability is integrated into their process. Well, I thought it was kind of interesting to map out how does information move around. Now, we all start off assuming that it follows an org chart, right? We're like, oh yeah, so the reliability engineer tells the reliability manager, it goes through maybe design manager, the VP, the CTO, and that's how the information flows. Well, I said, okay, let's just start with a blank sheet of paper and see what actually happens. It looked a lot more like this. This is the way I've actually mapped out in one organization how the information moved. So I found things like, okay, this engineering manager doesn't go through their VP. They communicate directly to CTO like on a regular basis. They're like buddies. I found once that we had a quality test person who certified quality test results who, by the way they've structured it, had to get approval from the CTO for a weekly function that they had. And the CTO had to take time out of their schedule every week to do this and wanted it that way, or they thought they wanted it that way. So you had skipping like 3 levels as part of their regular process. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's what was really happening. Information doesn't follow the chain of command, and information is then going to be very selective with how it flows. So this idea of a reliability czar, somebody who doesn't who works as an advisor, so to speak, and doesn't follow the chain of command is already happening. The thing is, we're just not really acknowledging it and ensuring it's going to function correctly. And that's where the idea came from, because I was observing in lots of different ways where you had these advisors that kind of floated around and made sure information got from A to B. But the crazy thing is, it wasn't really acknowledged, so it wasn't consistent. So that's almost worse. You're depending on something that may or may not be consistent. I personally have served that role informally, where I can say there was a major redirection in a project because I happened to be at the coffee pot at the right time. There was a major issue that ended up redirecting what we were doing that was within a group that was frustrated and tired of sharing. They kind of had gotten the boy who cries wolf syndrome, where they always seemed alarmed. Everybody's like, yeah, whatever. And I very literally at the coffee pot having conversation, and they shared this information. I was like, whoa, what? Holy cow. And I brought that to the executive steering meeting, and they were like, okay, no, we're responding to this. I mean, that chance meeting changed what happened. So with the idea of actually showing the representation of how communication happens, I found out I ended up creating an annotation for it. And this is the key to it. And you can see here for two individuals speaking in the 4 configurations there, A, B, C, and D, there's arrows in different places. So the notation I created was having an arrow closer to 1 is where the information is initiated, and the direction is flowing. So in this case, this engineering manager is voluntarily giving information to the CTO. So that is pushed information. So there's pushed information and pulled information. In B, the CTO is requesting information. That's pulled information. So why did I bother noting what started the information flow? It makes a huge, huge, huge difference. Here's the difference. I come home from work. I'm super excited about something. And I tell my wife. She comes in the door at the same time. And I'm like, guess what? I'm having to work today. Da, 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 da. I'm pushing information onto her. It's unsolicited. She didn't ask how my day was, right? How is she receiving that? She's like, oh, OK, yeah, you know, she's trying to do whatever she's doing, getting settled in. She has things she's thinking of. Same information, but instead we're at dinner, and she's like, how was your day at work? And I tell her about this thing. She's hearing me. She's listening. She's going to ask me questions. That's the difference between pushed and pulled information, right? And this is something, too, with advice, right? People say never take unsolicited advice, right? Because the person who is giving you the advice then is doing it for themselves. So I thought it was really important to do this. And you can see in this one here, I actually have both, because in that case, in that relationship, the CTO most often was doing both, asking and giving information, and there was not a lot of initiation on the other side. And that was fine, but I just wanted to document it. And you can see here in the annotations, I also put I started writing down what information flowed. So pretty quickly ended up with a chart where I found that what information was critical. So somebody like a reliability czar can kind of ensure that these paths always stay open and continue to flow. So information just communicated casually. In addition to the significance of pushed or pulled, it has to be packaged right? I mean, there's information that I can just communicate with you directly, verbally, quickly. I can write a white paper on something. I can make a PowerPoint presentation, or I could have a book. These are all very different. The book is the effort of taking a very large subject, compiling it, organizing it, and putting it in a format where 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, it can be easily retrieved and viewed and absorbed. So the reliability czar has to think about this and begin to think of what types of information products should they make for the different areas where they're delivering information. If they end up feeding information regularly to, let's say, an executive staff that has very fast Friday afternoon flows of disseminating to the other leaders what's going on, maybe it's a PowerPoint slide. A single PowerPoint slide you email on Thursday afternoon. The CEO, CTO is used to seeing it. They see it. They get a glance. There's kind of a shorthand to it. And that's a really good way to do it. It could be it's the coffee pot thing. It could be it's the pop in Monday morning at 8 a.m., stick your head in the door of somebody's office. Now, I keep giving the example of doing this from the bottom to the top, but it's the other way too. When executives, there's information they want, and they want it too in a way that hasn't followed through the chain of command. I mean, think about that idea of a leader who has an advisor. I mean, how many advisors does the President of the United States have? How many advisors did a king have? I mean, there's no real leader who doesn't have formal advisor relationships. And this is that as well, and really important for them to know they're getting the information they want on request, right, solicited, and that it's not filtered, right? It's to a certain, there's a certain purity to it and conciseness. So let's take an example. I kind of gave you this overview of it. What would be an example of this? Let's say that we had a halt test, right? We were doing vibration in this halt test, and we had a PCB board, and the test engineer observed that one of the capacitors had started to lift. And they had mentioned it in a design review, and the design engineers are, OK, yeah, there's a lot going on. That's fine. Oh, just, that's fine. Yeah, we can just fix that. We'll just put hot glue on it, whatever. We'll make sure that happens in manufacturing. And it gets a little bit dismissed. So, all right. And the reliability czar, picks this up. Now, that the test engineers communicated this thing, and how well has it been received. Well, the managers had said, well, I don't know if we really want to slow down the project for us, so it doesn't get past the VP level. Now, the Czar that was selected is somebody who knows the technology really well and knows a lot about the legacy. They kind of have a special connection to the program itself. So they don't just have an alliance with the team and the organization, but to that program and that product line. They should have a connection and ownership to it. So they should be steeped well enough in the information to know, you know what? We've seen this in legacy products, actually. You know what? This is actually 5% of the failure modes we've seen in the past revision of this product that we've had out the last 5 years. And we always kind of fix it and we say whatever, it's a small percentage, but it's there. So now in that context, we kind of realize we are again seeing a symptom of a chronic issue. And it's not a part of the bigger program or decide, because it wasn't big enough to really get onto this whole entire, the agenda for design changes right now. But in the context of the bigger picture for that product line, and the Czar kind of having that more informal information, was able to package it in a way where I think leadership is going to say, do you know what? Why are we just having this chronic thing that's just going to get us over and over again? And also at risk of causing a bigger issue. Those small issues done at different times can cause much bigger issues. So that's how that Czar can kind of ensure that information that might have been left to the side found a context and was packaged in a way and delivered where it was able to have the impact that it really should with how important it was. So 3 functions that are really important with the Czar. The first is distills information to essential elements. If you notice in all the examples I gave, the Czar gave very concise information, right? They weren't long rambling discussions. They weren't in the context of bigger things. Very concise, very clear, and packaged appropriately. You don't, if I handed all of you a big book today of information, none of you would read it. What was appropriate for this interaction was a 20-minute discussion, right, with a few PowerPoint slides. That was packaged correctly. I distilled the information down to something that fits this forum and delivered it in a way that is easy to digest. This is a very important function because a lot of the purpose of the Czar is to get information where it needs to go. It can't be information that's not packaged correctly. The second function is they make sure they stay in tune with leadership and what they need. Think of that advisor, right? Think of that presidential advisor again. They aren't just waiting for the president to ask them questions, right? They are also kind of staying very aware of what they believe that leader needs to know and offering it at the right times. So you have to keep in mind that a lot of this, the value is the information getting to those individuals at the right time. And they don't know they need it. They may not know that information even exists. And this goes the other way too. Leaders can also keep in mind, you know what I think that the technical team really could use to know is this, this, and this. This is what's changing in our market. This is what's changing in this program. They may be totally unaware of what's happening over here with our resources being competitively pulled for this other product line. Companies compete internally with different product lines, and that can be really helpful. And the Czar can be the person to help get that information to there. The third is that link. They have to remember that they're not a creator in this role. They're not a creator. They're not creating information. They are a link. They are making sure something gets from A to B, B to C, C to D. And like a large train network, they also have to be doing the switching to make sure it gets to the right places at the right time. So those are the 3 functions that they absolutely have to remember. So who should it be? Who do we pick for this? Well, there's a couple criteria. One is they need to be very knowledgeable in the technology, right? Because these are people who communicate with the technical teams and leadership. Now, it's people who understand technical. That's a rather large library of information, experience, history, and it's not incredibly difficult to learn the language of leadership. You can be taught that in a relatively short period of time to the degree that you need. How to communicate to them, how do these individuals and your organization leaders like to get information, that can be taught. It is very hard to go the other way. If you take somebody who's only been a director or a project manager on the business or marketing side, and try to give them this role, that it's quite a struggle to truly understand the technical language and the details of the technology. And to that degree, then, it's not going to be as good a connection on both ends. They have to be highly trusted by everybody. They have to, if a reliability czar is not, creates, let's say, conflict or turmoil with the VP and CTO, let's say they communicate with the CEO frequently, eventually that's going to erode their value to the CEO. The CEO can't be dealing with them adding conflict to the other aspects of their leadership, their direct reports. Those are people they trust. If they aren't able to work fluidly within that structure, then they're not going to have a lot of value. Other side as well. If let's say the front line again, the technical designers, test engineers, technicians, reliability engineers, quality engineers, if they don't trust that the czar is there to help, to get communication going forward, to get communication to the leaders in a way that represents them, they're not going to share information, right? They don't want to be exposed. So that trust on both ends is really critical and should be monitored by everybody. And they should, I mean, I think that it would be fair for people to vote one way or the other that they feel that this role is working, because somebody shouldn't have this role indefinitely. It's totally appropriate to have it be a set period of time and bring other people in and out. And this is also good because you never want there to be a sense that the role has become something that they use to their benefit. And the language. They have to make sure they can speak everybody's language. They have to be able to be a translator. This is very critical. Well, thank you very much. That's what I wanted to share on that. Are there any questions?